أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Welcome back to our history class of Middle Age from Islamic perspective. Today is week 2 and we will be covering Maakan Time of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Honestly, we cannot do a justice to the Seerah when we cover it's only in 2 classes because this week we will try to cover Maakan Time and next week we will try to cover Madinan Time. So what is the plan of this class is that we are going to summarize very simplified version of Maakan Time, and I will encourage you guys go ahead and read more books about it. Now, what we know about the era when Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was born or right before that. In the late 6th centuries of the Christian age, a number of cities flourished along the Arabian coast as hotbeds of commerce. The Arabians received goods at Red Sea ports and took camel caravans across the desert to Syria and Palestine, transporting spices and clothes and other trade goods. They went to north, to south, to east, and west. So they knew all about the Christian world and its ideas, but also about Zoroaster and his ideas. A number of Jewish tribes lived among the Arabs. They had come here after the Romans have driven them out of Palestine. Both the Arabs and Jewish were Semitic and traced their descent to Abraham, through him to Adam alayhi salam. Now the Arabs saw themselves as the line descended from Abraham's son Ismail and his second wife Hajar. Now the stories commonly associated with the Old Testament, Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, Noah and his ark, Yusuf and Egypt, Moses and Pharaoh, and the rest of them. These were the part of the Arab traditions that time too. Although most of the Arabs were pagan, by the time they used to start worshipping many idols, however, at that point, Jewish, they still remained monotheistic. So that means just worshipping one God. Now, the two groups were otherwise more or less indistinguishable in terms of culture and lifestyle. The Jewish of these areas spoke Arabic, and their tribal structure resembled that of Arabs. Some Arabs were actually nomadic Bedouins. Now, actually, those Bedouins, they used to leave deserts. But others were, some used to live in towns. And Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the prophet of Islam, he was born and raised in the highly cosmopolitan town of Mecca near the Red Sea coast. Now, how was Mecca city? Meccans were wide-ranging merchants and traders, but their biggest, most prestigious business was religion. Mecca had temples. They had at least 100 of pagan idols with names like Hubal and Manat and Allat, Al-Uzza, like different names of gods. And pilgrims streamed into, the people used to come to do Hajj and visit the sites. They used to perform the rites. They used to do little business on the side. So Mecca had a very busy tourist industry with inns and taverns and shops and services catering to the Hajj. Now, we don't have much details about the Meccan era. And why is that? We know a very little about details about pre-Prophet era. Because Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was born around the year 570. The exact date is actually unknown, and you will see different version of the date in Rahiq al-Maktoum, the Sealed Nectar book. No one was actually paying much attention to him that time because nobody knew that he's going to grow into somebody so important. His father was a poor man who died when Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was still in the womb, leaving Muhammad's mother virtually penniless. Then, when Muhammad was only 6, his mother died too. And although Muhammad was a member of Quraysh, the most powerful tribe in the Mecca, he got no status out of it because he belonged to one of the tribe's poorer clan named Banu Hashim. Now, he got he was a orphan boy, He was growing up alone, but he was not abandoned because his relatives took care of him. He lived with his grandfather until the old man died, Abu Talib, and then his uncle sorry, his grandfather is Abdul Muttalib, and then his uncle is Abu Talib, who raised him like a son. And yet the fact remained that he was no one in the culture outside his uncle's home. He probably tasted the disrespect and the disdain that was an orphan's lot. His his childhood planted in him a lifelong concern for the widows and orphans. Now, we know a very little about that time about Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Of course, first reason, as I mentioned, nobody was recording history at that time. People didn't know Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was going to grow into someone very important, and many of the early Muslims actually died before historical narration. Now, this is the map of Saudi Arabia, and I found that, just put it in there for you guys. Now, the next is, now, how was Arab society? Arab society, it was a tribal society, tribal land without any centralized government. It was not like the countries that we see these days. Okay. There were many tribes. They had their tribe leaders. The tribe had a tie with another tribes. So it was not like a central government, a democracy, or republic like that. There was nothing, not a centralized government. It was small, underdeveloped society in between two superpowers of that time, Persia and Byzantium. The Prophet was born in Mecca in the year of elephant. A lot of stories about his childhood is sometimes people talk about too much, exaggerated, and then sometimes it's fabricated. The authentic narrations that we find usually comes through Ayman and Halima as-Sadiya. Now, who was Ayman? She was the first one to hold Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam after he was born. He is the most authentic source in Maakan Time, and she lived after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was died. So he was there when his father died, when his mother died, even when Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was died. Subhanallah. Now, Halima Sadiya, he was Halima Sadiya and her family, they took care of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as a young child. He was taken to desert to live with Halima Sadiya. He spent time with them. He grew up with them, with their children, and then his mother passed away. Just side note, Halima and her family, they accepted Islam after Makkah was conquered. Now, how was his youth? Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he grew up in Makkah under the care of his uncle Abu Talib. He gained a strong reputation of being an honest and trustworthy man. And, all of the Makkan society, they really appreciated him. They loved him. They liked him. They used to call him, Al-Amin. So when Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was 25-year old, a wealthy widowed businesswoman named Khadija hired him to manage her caravans and conduct her business for her. Arab society was not very kind to the woman as a ruler, but or even even they were not kind to the women who used to have their own wealth. But the fact that she held on to the wealth, it really suggests that what a powerful and charismatic personality she must have had. Mutual respect and affection between Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Khadija radhiyallahu anhu led to marriage, a warm partnership that lasted until Khadija's death 25 years later. And even though Arabia was a polygamous society in which having only one wife is very uncommon, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was married to only one wife as long as Khadija was lived. Now, as an adult, he built quite a successful personality and business life. He acquired a reputation of his diplomatic skills. People used to come, and in a quarreling party, they used to come and they used to ask help from him to solve any arguments or act as an arbitrator. So when Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he approached age of 40, he began to suffer to see when the people are struggling in their life. He was troubled by the meaning of life. He was looking around. He saw a society bursting with wealth, but still there are many people there still hungry. There are many widows there still barely living on charity. There are many orphans, they're scrambling for enough to eat. How could this be? And he saw a lot of idols people are worshiping. He never worshipped any idols. And there are actually, if you read in details, you will see that there are actually many people in that time, even they knew this is not right. They never worshipped any idols. They were searching for the truth. They were searching for the creator. Because for Isa alayhi salam, he brought the message already, but the message got mixed up, right? So people had that fitra to seek for truth, seek for their own actual truth creator. Now he developed a habit of retreating periodically to a cave in the mountains to meditate, and one day he had a momentous experience. He used to go there, he used to go to his cave, he used to reflect, he used to meditate. Now all of a sudden he had that momentous experience, and there are many narrations how that experience went through. The most well-known experience is that it was apparently oral and personal interaction with angel Jibril. So when angel Jibril came, he felt Prophet Muhammad SAW felt that someone else was in the cave with him. Suddenly, he felt himself gripped from behind so hard and he couldn't breathe. And then came a voice, not so much hard as felt through his being, and commanding him to recite. And Prophet ﷺ, he managed to gasp out and he couldn't recite. And the command came back again, recite, read. And again, Prophet Muhammad, he protested that he couldn't recite. He didn't know how to read and write and didn't know what to recite. But the angel, the voice, the impulse, blazed once more time, recite. Thereupon, Prophet Muhammad, he felt the words of terrible grandeur forming in his heart, and the recitation began. And we know the Surah Al-Alaq. So the meaning of it: recite the name of your Lord who created humans from the drop of blood. Recite. And your Lord is the most bountiful, he who taught human by the pen, taught humans that which they knew not. Now Muhammad came down from the mountain very sick with fear, thinking he might have possessed by jinn or evil spirit. And outside he felt a presence feeling the world to every horizon. He was so scared. And when you get scared, if something terrible happened in your life, you run to someone you rely on, you trust on, you get the comfort. So he ran to home. He told Khadija, his wife, and that really shows how comforting, how warm, how good was their relationship as a spouse. They used to trust each other. Now, she knew how Prophet Muhammad ﷺ as a human being, and she assured him that, you know what, you are not an evil human being. Allah will not allow anything bad happens to you. There must be something that is good. So let's go to my cousin Waraka, and we will ask him what is going on. Then, and I think you guys all know the story of Waraka ibn Nawfal. I'm not going to go into the details, but remember that to read about it, he was a Christian monk that time, because he was trying to find also the truth, trying to find the message, and he had a lot of knowledge about Old Testament. Now, at first, just hold on a second in here. Okay. All right. So at first, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he preached only to his intimate friends, close relatives. For a time, he experienced no further revelation. No more wahi was coming to him, and he became so depressed. And gradually, and eventually, actually, the revelation began to come again, and gradually he went public with the message. until he was telling the people around the Mecca. Now, what was the message? The message was that he was preaching that you have to give up, you have to submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you have to accept, get rid of all these idols, you have to know that there is only one true God, Allah, and you have to be justice. What is the meaning of submitting to Allah? The meaning of submitting to Allah is that you have to sacrifice for justice. You have to serving a greater good. You have to helping the poor. You have to help the weak and the meek. So you can't keep doing whatever you guys are doing here, right? So the dawah started as secret, mainly to the family. And the name of the early converts include Khadija anhu, Ayman, Ali, Zaid, Abu Bakr, Uthman, and many others. Now, the weaker the members of the society were attracted to the message but persecuted for it, right? Then the message became open and persecution worsened. What is persecution? Persecution means torturing those Muslims. And we have to understand the situation actually, what is going on in here. Among the many temples in Mecca, there was a cube-shaped structure with a much reverted cornerstone, a polished black stone that had fallen out of the sky a long time ago. And it's said there are many stories about it. This temple was called the Kaaba, and tribal tales say that Abraham himself has built it with the help of his son Ismail. Prophet Muhammad considered himself a descendant of Abraham and knew all about Abraham's uncompromising monotheism. Indeed, Muhammad did not think he was preaching something new. He believed that he was renewing what Abraham and then countless other prophets had said. So just give me a second in here. Okay. So he was preaching that people should only worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and there should not be any idols in the Kaaba. Now let's move on to our next slide. You can see here a map. So Makkah and Medina is the north of Makkah city. We can see Red Sea in our left-hand side, which is west side. And then right side, you see Arabian Sea here. And then south, you see Eritrea, Ethiopia, Yemen, and other cities. Now, before we get into 3 hijras, I just wanted to talk about a little bit more. Okay, I just wanted to talk about a little bit more about what was the situation or economic situation in Makkah that time. You have to understand that Makkah's business leaders, they came to feel threatened by Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam because they were making good money from the religious tourism. If this only one God idea, they feared that the people will come and then other gods, then nobody's going to buy the gods. They would sell small gods. They would sell that or not gods, they would sell small idols. They would say that when you come guys to worship all the big gods that we have here, the idols we have, you can't come every day, you can't come every week or every month, so how about you guys buy a little small like doll shaped idols. So that was a huge business. Then people used to come. Now, if this one God message is spread, then what will happen? They would be ruined. But ironically, if you see today, over 1 million people come to Makkah each year to perform the rites of Hajj and at the Kaaba, making the biggest annual gathering on the earth. So actually, it's just irony. Anyway, so besides Makkah profited from profiting from these idols, also they used to profiting from gambling, prostitution, and drinking, and all these, and taking money from the poor and not giving charities. So they really didn't like this idea. And the tribal power broken could not tolerate a man rallying against very entertainments that brought in their wealth, even if he had merely a smattering of the followers, many of them powerless, poor people and slaves. Well, for one thing, not all of his followers were poor, though Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's followers, because There were many wealthy people and many respected people, also part of his followers. And physically, there were many people also were joining. They were also physically imposing giant like Umar radiallahu anhu. So for nearly 12 years, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's uncle Abu Talib defended him against his all criticism. According to the most people, Abu Talib never converted to Islam himself, but he stood up for his nephew out of the personal loyalty, love, and his word had weight. And Khadija also backed her husband, undoubtedly, which gave him also precious comfort. Then, in the course of a single devastating year, the year is actually called the year of sorrow, because most of these major figures in Muhammad's life, they died. So when these two main figures died in his life, leaving him exposed to his enemy, that year, 7 elders of Quraysh tribe decided to have Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam killed while he slept, thereby getting rid of troublemaker before he could do real damage to the economy. One of the Muhammad's several uncles spearheaded the plot. In fact, all 7 plotters were related to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, what was happening? So actually, 2 people helped him. One was his cousin Ali radiallahu anhu. He was a young man, and another person was Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. Give me a second in here. What happened to my slides? So 3 hijras. What was happening is that actually some companions, they migrated to Abyssinia to escape persecution, because Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he could not migrate or go somewhere else or escape, because he doesn't do anything without the order from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He doesn't say anything, he doesn't do anything without Allah's order. So he waited, but he let the other Muslims that migrate to Abyssinia, migrate somewhere else, because it was also guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Because the king of Abyssinia secretly converted to Islam when the Sahabi went there. It's a beautiful story. You guys should really read about it. Al-Najashi. And he actually accepted Islam secretly. And because that the way we know, because Prophet Muhammad, when he passed away, he prayed for him. He prayed janazah for him. Now the message, so this was the situation, what was going on in that time. Now, let me just go into the next part, what was happening. So now, we know that people come to Mecca for Hajj. So there is a city beside Mecca, not beside, a little bit far away from Mecca, 250 miles away from Mecca. It's called Yathrib. So they came from Yathrib, and one of the companions' name was Musab ibn Umair. So he accepted Islam. He went back to Yathrib. He spread the message of Islam. And he went to the leaders of Medina, and that's where he started preaching Islam. And then the more people became Muslims, and then delegates, they came. And what was the situation in Yathrib that time? The situation in Yathrib was, they were fighting each other. They were a tribal society. It was such a chaos. So they were really craving for a leader who'd come and unite them together. So when they accepted Islam, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he talked with them. they were having a, those delegations, they came, they were talked with them. And give me a second. So one time when Allah's order came, that time, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ decided to hijrah. Hijrah was a turning point of our seerah. It is a turning point of a seerah because hijrah means leaving from one place to another, right? For sake of Allah. So just imagine the time that people of Yathrib wanted a fair-minded outsider to come in and solve their problem in their tribes. They hoped that if somebody else from the outside comes who has a very good reputation, a fair-minded man, and we know that he's a very skillful arbitrator, and he's a very charismatic diplomatic skill he had. So they really wanted somebody from outside to come, and they accepted Islam. Now, several of them, they visited Mecca to meet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they found him really overwhelming. Charisma overwhelming. They converted to Islam. They invited Muhammad to move to Yathrib as an arbitrator and help put an end to all the quarreling. The Prophet and then Prophet ﷺ accepted, because that time Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered him that yes, he can migrate. Now we know that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's murder was planned in 622, and that night Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Abu Bakr slipped away into a desert. Ali crawled into Muhammad's bed to make it look like he was still there. And when the assassins, they burst in, they were furious to find that Ali is laying in there. It was not the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Anyway, they spared the kid and they sent a search party out to hunt down the Muhammad, the Prophet and Abu Bakr. They had made it only to a cave nearby Mecca, but the legend has it that there's a spider built in its web across the mouth of the cave after they entered. When the post came by and saw the web, they assumed no one could be inside, so they passed on. Muhammad and Abu Bakr made it safely to Yathrib, by which the time some of Muhammad's other followers had actually moved there too, and the rest soon followed. The most of these Meccan immigrants had to leave their homes, their property behind. They were making a break with their family members and fellow tribesmen who had not converted. But at least they were coming to a place where they would be safe, because in Mecca, life was becoming so difficult. You guys should really read about these in details, because how Muslims were really persecuted. They were really tortured, and they were boycotted. Like a lot of things were going on. Like life became really, really unbearable to live in there. Okay, so how many, 13 years after, actually, 13 years after preaching in Mecca, they migrated. Now, the lessons and reflection. Allah sent his message to the right person in the right place at the right time. And changing the society requires struggle, willingness to face persecution from one's people, because it is not easy. You and me can think and sit down and we can plan, we should do this, we should do that, this would change, this should bring change. But actually, when you start changing, even in your family, if somebody is doing something that is not right, that is not Islamic, if you know this is not right and you try to change, you will see the struggle, you will see the protest you get from your own family. So Prophet ﷺ found the same thing. His own family, even, his own family, his own countrymen, his own people were actually being against him. Now, we have to understand, so many people these days, we expect an instant change. Let's say, and within 2 to 3 years, 5 years, we give up. But it is a long process. It is a gradual process. It is the nature of life. When we try to live for the sake of Allah, we have to understand, and this is the part, it is the path, and it is the road towards Jannah. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he had nothing to gain, and he was very wealthy and respected. Sorry, he was he was not wealthy, but he was very respected, and he didn't have a very. It's not so. What happened that? Let's talk about it. He has nothing to gain. His money was actually taken away, right? And there's no guarantee that he could go to Medina and become a ruler of the country. They say that if Prophet, a lot of people, they claim that it is his prophethood is false. Now, the people who actually in Maakan Time, the leaders of Quraysh, they were offering him so many things. Sorry for this, for the distraction. So the people in the Quraysh, they were in Makkah, they were offering so many things to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They claim, they say, do you want women? We can give you women. Do you want respect? Okay, you become the leader. Do you want money? Do you want wealth? Do you want good house? Do you want property? Do you want camels? Like, what do you want? Just stop preaching all these, because this is ruining our finance. It's ruining our economy. You can have whatever you want in the whole country, but stop preaching it. But what did he do? Did he accept any of this? If he were a false prophet, it is hard for people to, not to accept. If somebody is coming and telling you, giving you billions and billions of dollars, like whatever you want, if you want to be president of this country, if you want a house, you want like whatever you want, we are going to give you. We have everything. Just stop preaching this. No, he's like, I am not here to get all these. I'm a messenger from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I have to give you guys the message. That's all it is. I'm not asking anything from you guys. So if he was claiming, if his claim as a prophet was false to gain something, he would have taken it that time. And that is one of the biggest proof that he was truly a prophet of Allah. And we have to understand, he has nothing to gain to claiming to be a prophet. And the Makkah revelation focused primarily on the theology forming the core of religion. And history is a human science. Our history is not as perfectly preserved as a revelation itself, right? The way Quran, it is the wahi from Allah. Allah promised us in Quran that he's going to protect it, he's going to preserve it. So it was preserved and protected. But in our history, we see a lot of, it is a human science. So it was not as preserved as, of course, Quran. Now in Maakan revelation, in Maakan time, we see the main focus of the Quran was mostly about the belief, the forming of the core religion and theology, and what we should believe, what we should not believe, who is Allah, what are the names of Allah, what are the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who were angels, all the stories of behind previous prophets. So all those things were the main theme of the verses in Makkah time. And I think that will end our class today. It's been a long class, I know, but it is so hard to do a justice in one class. And this is the core of the nature of this course, that we're going to go through very quickly in one topic at a class, and then that will give you guys an introduction to the main topic, and you can go ahead and explore, inshallah. So jazakallahu khair, barakallah fi, for coming today, and inshallah we will move on to next week, Madinan time. Assalamu alaikum.